Hey everyone, how you doing? Hope everyone is having a great day. I'm excited because my second favourite Jewish festival is coming up. Yeah, my favourite's Passover. This is my second favourite. It is Jewish New Year, where we celebrate, of course, the new year in the calendar. And how do we celebrate it? Well, you know, it's always about the food. And this time it's about sweetness, because what we want is for everybody to have a really sweet new year. So we add, this is a rash generalization, I know, pretty much honey to everything. And we make all sorts of things with honey, from honey biscuits to honey cake, to briskets with honey and prunes, to carrots with honey. I could go on and on and on. I'm going to share with you one of my favorite recipes for this time of the year, and these are honey snap biscuits. The recipe was first published in Now for Something Sweet, Monday Morning Cooking Club's fourth book, and it came to us from a cook in Perth. Her name is Carolyn Levitt, and the recipe is spot on. If you want to make the dough ahead, you can freeze it and defrost it before rolling and cutting. Dry ingredients, we have got plain flour and some baking soda or bicarbonate of soda, which of course is different to baking powder. We've got some spices, cinnamon, ginger, and a thing called a mixed spice, some salt. Then we have got what I'm going to call the wet ingredients, which is going to be the butter, which has got to be on room temperature, brown sugar, 1 egg, and some honey, which I'll measure last because I want to show you how I measure it. Just a note about the butter, because we're creaming the butter, it's really got to be proper room temperature, and that means if it's a cold day, which it is not today in Sydney, then you'll need to make sure it's warm enough. And one way to do this is to get your butter, cut it from block or chop it and put it on a piece of baking paper. Get a bowl, heat the bowl with some boiling water, let the bowl get hot, dry it, put it on top, leave it till you're ready to cook. And by the time you get there, the heat generated from the bowl will soften the butter. So we now have lovely soft butter. All right. Creaming butter and sugar by hand is something you can definitely do. You'll need to put in a bit of muscle, but I'm feeling a bit lazy today, so I'm going to use the handheld beater. It's also great in a stand mixer, so you actually don't have to do anything at all. So I've got my flour. First thing I'm going to do is this. We don't need to put the oven on. I can hear some of you asking me, should we put the oven on? No, because we're resting the dough. Plenty of time to do it then. And the baking soda. Baking soda is a thing that you need to use in combination with some sort of an acid to get it going, to get it working, unlike baking powder, which can work with anything. And the acid in this is, of course, the honey. I'm going to put my spices in as well because I want them nicely distributed through the whole thing. I'm not going to put the salt in, even though people do sift the salt with everything else, because I find that the grains just end up sitting in the bottom of the colander anyway. I'm going to add that when I cream the butter. Okay, and this is just a matter of doing that and stirring this around. I can already smell those spices, which I really, really love. Reminds me of baking and of Christmas time and of Jewish New Year. Really any baking festival when those spices come out. Okay, so just make sure what we're trying to do here is really combine the ingredients more than anything else and make sure all those spices and the baking soda are well dispersed through the flour. So hopefully some of you are cooking along with me today. I'm going to do everything step by step so you can watch and cook at the same time. What are we going to do while the dough is resting for half an hour, I ask you? I could just tell you stories of my recent trip. I was lucky enough to go on a beautiful trip. Those of you who follow me on Instagram would have seen all the deliciousness that I came across. We could just talk about that, but no jokes. I'm not going to make you wait while the pastry rests. I'm going to pause. You can go and do something else, and then we'll come back. I don't even know that even I could talk to you for half an hour without anything in front of me. No, I could. Okay, so I've got some little husks of the little, I guess, of the nutmeg or whatever was in there, and I'm going to just toss that out. Okay, so this is lovely, well mixed dry ingredients, which I'm going to set aside for the moment. And now let's get to the butter. We're going to cream the butter. Just going to cut it up into some smaller pieces. Hopefully it's soft enough. I mean, even though it is winter in Sydney, it's been like, yesterday was 20 degrees or something crazy like that. The butter still isn't as soft as it would have been had it been a summer's day, just saying. It's really hard to cream butter that's not soft enough. It just takes a lot of effort and not much outcome. So make sure you chop your butter up nicely so that it's less work for the beater. That's all I'll say. So I've got unsalted butter because I'm adding salt to the recipe. There's quite a lot of salt in this recipe, but you don't want to use salted butter and added salt because then it's just too much salt, like way too much salt. So if you are using salted butter, if you just suddenly realise that your butter's salted, then don't add any extra salt, okay? So there's my butter, and I'm just going to give it a whiz. I want it to start to get soft, okay? So start on low. If you start on high, you'll have butter all over you, I promise you. What I am going to do, which makes it easier to mix, is to put a towel underneath it. A wet towel is particularly good, but it's just easier to do it like this now with you there. Let's go. So we're creaming the butter, okay? Making it light and fluffy. Okay, now I'm going to add in the brown sugar. And I'm going to, again, start slowly. Same reason, especially with these, if you put it on too high, it just goes all over you. Okay? I'm going to throw the salt in now. What we're looking for is a pale mixture, and if you can feel, which you can, that the sugar should start to dissolve into the butter. I just have to do something. It's really annoying me that I have done this so badly. Okay, there we are. Yeah, what can I say about myself? Okay, here goes. Yeah, got a bit overexcited there, went up to a very high speed. Keep it to sort of moderately high. Just scraping it down like you always have to do, whether you use a stand mixer or a hand beater. Need to scrape down the sides with my trusty cannot live without spatula. Hope yours is starting to get smooth and creamy and bordering on fluffy. Not quite there yet. I think that will do. All right, so that's nice and it's much lighter than it was. It's very smooth. Yum, looks a bit like smooth peanut butter. I'm going to beat the egg into it, again on low speed. Put the egg just in the bottom and just mix it there. Okay, I'm just trying to incorporate the egg into the butter, which is going very nicely. Okay, perfect. Now for the honey. All right, so if you measure honey ahead of time, it's going to stick to the thing and be really annoying to get out. So best thing to do is get some olive oil spray. Spray your glass that you're measuring it into. And you can do it by weight or volume. I find weight really easy with honey, and I need 90 grams. Let me just check that, should I? I think it was 90. I'd hate to do the wrong thing. I'd have to do the video all over again. That would be really, really, you know, not so fun. It's always fun the first time. Second time, it's really not. Gosh, this is a beautiful book. I love it. This is a new copy. I think something happened to my other one. I don't know what happened. All right, here we are. Yes, 90 grams. So I'm going to measure 90 grams straight into here. And use whichever honey is your favourite. I like a honey without a strong floral flavour or scent. I like a plain honey. I'm just really a simple person, simple girl. All right, so 90 grams, a couple of grams extra in case any gets left behind. And that should just go straight in. See, it just comes out really nicely. That's how I measure the honey. Or you could measure it actually straight into that, sit that whole bowl on the scale. Okay, honey's done. I'm just going to give that a mix. Starting to smell like Jewish New Year. Okay, one scrape down and then we're good. You know, like I always say to you when we're cooking, that if I wasn't doing the cooking video, things would be much quicker. So when you do it at home next time on your own, you'll see it's quite a quick recipe. Because I'm chatty and trying to comment on each step, it does take longer, okay? So don't fear, this is not a long, complicated recipe. I just love a chat. I've got it on a low speed now, and that looks absolutely fabulous. Okay, so that's all good to go. No, that was not... Who does that all the time? Yeah, we've all done that. That's the button I meant to press. All right, let's set those aside. Put that away, we don't need that anymore. Because now we're going to fold. Don't think we'll need that. I'm going to fold the dry ingredients in. I'm not going to do it in the mix. I'm going to do it with my strong arm. Okay, so start with about a quarter of the dry ingredients. It's just easier if you don't put it all in at once. And we're just folding it in. Because the last thing we want is tough biscuits. So sometimes if you do it all in the machine, it just works the flour too hard and it doesn't quite recover. So this is sort of a nice way to do it. It does take a bit longer. If you do want to do it in the machine, you can just do it just the tiniest bit on a very low speed. Okay, here we go. It's so quiet after that noise of the machine. And you can use a spatula or a wooden spoon here. I have got both handy so that I can switch if needed. But you know I love my spatula. Okay, and the last bit. Okay. So I'm just going to keep mixing it carefully and gently. This is the meditative part of the day, and we just make our dough and we see our dough come together. And every time I bake something like this, I'm full of wonder that you take butter and sugar and other ingredients and you turn it into a beautiful dough that you can't stop eating. I mean, it's just a miracle of cooking, isn't it? So I'll just keep going until it's ready. We're nearly there. You can see it's coming together. The smell of this dough is so good. I hope that you are enjoying this process as I am. You could also do this whole dough, now that I think about it, in the food processor. Probably thought this last time I made it. Start with the butter, same way. Just put everything in step by step. And once you get to the flour, just do it really gently and quickly if you don't want to do it by hand. Now, you know, I have to just do this because it's just too delicious. So good. Such a good dough. All right, so we're just about done with the dough. Just a couple more mixes. Look, it's only taken 2 minutes. Doesn't really take a long time at all. And then I'm going to tip it onto the bench in a minute, and I'm going to give it a quick knead, just a quick one. And because it's sticky, I'm actually going to take my ring off for a sec. Hope I remember that. Because there's nothing worse than dough stuck in your rings, really, is there? Nothing worse. All right. Yum. Look how easy this is coming together. You could just finish it in the bowl, but I want to show you how nice this dough is, rolling it to bring it together. Honestly, I could just sit here and nibble at this whole thing. I don't know if any of you are like raw dough eaters, but it's delicious. So you could actually roll it at this point, but the biscuits will be a bit tough. So what you need to do is take some Glad wrap or baking paper or whatever you use, and just take your piece of dough and just pop it like this. And I'm going to pop it into the fridge for about an hour. And in the meantime, someone has to lick the bowl. See you in a bit. What I should have told you before we went away for the break is to preheat your oven to 180 degrees Celsius, so it's hot for you to put your honey snap bickies in. Okay, so let's start rolling them out. This is what you're going to need. You're going to need a baking tray like this, or the one that came with your oven, and some baking paper. And we're going to line the baking tray with baking paper. It just stops them from sticking. So I'm going to use some of this spray, which is what I call kitchen glue. Because what it does, it just, and see how this has a natural roll? So make sure you put it this way rather than that way, because it tends to go like that in the oven, which is sort of annoying when it goes all over your biscuits. So just going to put that down there. It just helps stick it down, just stops it from flying everywhere. So that's your tray ready to go. I'm going to put it there. You're going to need your dough, which is rested beautifully in the fridge, a rolling pin, some extra flour, and of course a cookie cutter. Just let me get a knife. Now I have made a giant batch of dough, so I'm going to not bake them all today. I'm going to actually just flour my board a little bit. And I'm going to cut it. This makes about 90 biscuits. It depends what size, I guess. And I'm going to cut it into 4 and just do a quarter at a time. And I am going to freeze the rest for another day. I'm going to freeze it in this piece, and I'm going to wrap each piece, put it in a bag, label it, and stick it in the freezer. Do not forget to label it, please. We've all been there. You know, that unknown piece of dough in the freezer that you thought you'd remember what it was, and you never do. All right. So what I did want to have a look is what size cookie cutter. It says 6 centimetre. Which makes 90. So obviously if you do a bigger cookie cutter, it'll make less, and if you do a smaller cookie cutter, it'll make more. Okay, so I'm going to choose, I like little ones, so I'm going to choose this size. Okay, and that's about probably 3 centimetres. So I should make lots. Okay. And I'm going to actually do it on the bench, not on a board. So I'm just going to give this like a super quick knead is the wrong word, but light knead just to get it pliable. That's it. Didn't work it, just did that. If you find your dough is too hard from the fridge, then just let it sit at room temperature till it's ready. And we're rolling it out till it's 2 to 3 millimeters, which is quite thin. And just flouring it as you go so it doesn't stick. Okay, just rolling all sides of it, just checking from time to time that it's not sticking. You can of course roll it out on baking paper as well, which perhaps makes it even easier. All right, so when it gets to the required thickness, and you want it to be as even as you can, and just check that it's not sticking, which is not. This dough is delicious. The smell of honey, so nice. Okay, and that's it. And that's what I'm going to do. So I've got my tray here. And I'm just going to pop them out. They will spread during baking because they've got a rising agent, baking soda in them. So just keep them maybe 1 centimetre or 2 apart on the tray. And that's it. So I'm going to keep doing that. And you will keep doing that. If you find that they stick, just use your knife to go underneath it, or a palette knife is a very good, but you know what? Palette knife is very useful just to get those cookies up that are stuck, or biscuits. Okay, so I'll just keep going. If they're not even, and sometimes mine are not, because you know you have to be particularly meticulous to get them all the same size, then some may have to cook a little longer than others. I quite like doing this, it's quite fun. What we're going to do is we're going to roll the scraps into a ball and let them sit on the bench for 10 minutes to rest before re-rolling. It's just better for them. It's really such a beautiful dough to work with. You can see it's really easy to cut. There's no issue, nothing sticks. It's just a very, very good recipe. Which is a reason why I love it so much. So we're going to keep going until we're finished. And you could of course leave them on the bench, which would probably make more sense, but then you have to pick them up carefully. I find that you disturb the shape less if you pop them straight onto the baking tray, but you know what? In the interest of time, let's do it this way and see what happens, all right? It's an experiment, just you and me, trying to see what happens. Okay, so now we're going to take our palette knife. You know what, it's probably not any less time consuming because now I've got to do this, whereas I didn't have to do it before. So pop them straight onto the baking tray if that works for you. See, now I've mucked that one up because of the palette knife. All right, I think that will do for the first bake. See what? All right, let's spread them out a bit. Because I remember once I baked a tray of biscuits and I did them really close together, and pretty much what I ended up with was a tray that was a biscuit. It was all joined together, which is not at all what we want. So it's much better to take care and put them on the tray nicely, like this. And now that's going to the oven for 10 minutes, okay? At 180 degrees, as I said. So let me put it in the oven and I'll show you what I'm going to do with the scraps. Now, if this is the first time you're making them, check after 7 minutes. I mean, they won't be cooked, but just in case your oven is running hot. Now this little perfect one can stay. These just get rolled into a ball again. Again, not going to overwork it, but going to bring it together. Ideally, let it sit on the bench for 10 minutes. You know, if you're doing the whole batch of dough, you can just let this sit on the bench till you're at the end and then put them all together and roll the scraps together. But let's do this now since I have already done it. Again, make sure your board is lightly floured. check with a knife or a thing that it just doesn't stick. Roll it out to about 2 to 3 millimeters, which is not very thick. Try to get it even, and then just go ahead and pop them out. It's really so much fun. It's like being a kid again, I guess, and playing with Play-Doh and all that stuff, which I used to love doing. Can't tell you how good this dough is. It's really fabulous. All right, let's keep going. So you can see I didn't actually count. With this size cookie cutter, about 3 centimeters, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 30 in there. This to me is a great size biscuit or bicky. It's perfect with a cup of tea. You probably have a couple. I quite like it rather than one big one. Okay, and our last few scraps. Again, try not to overwork the dough. Let it rest if you can. You want to get every last bicky out of this dough. Okay. Here we go. How many am I going to make? I've got 30 in the oven, and I have got 14 here. So what's that? It's going to make about 45 biscuits altogether. There you go. 45 biscuits of this tiny size. Yum. Okay, so we have 6.5 minutes to go. I'm not going to stand here and make you wait with me for them to come out of the oven. So I'm going to put you on pause. Hope your household is smelling of honey and spices. Mine is just starting to now, and I'll see you in a few minutes. That's the timer. Let's have a look. Exciting part of the day. Oops. They look great. So you can just leave them to cool on the tray. Just make sure they're well cooked underneath. See, the thicker ones aren't quite as well cooked as the thinner ones, which sort of makes sense. So I'm going to take the thinner ones off just because I am going to be pedantic about it. And I'm going to put the rest of them back into the oven just for another couple minutes. Okay. And I'm going to put the timer on, because what happens often is when you say just 2 minutes, you actually forget about them, and then it's the end of it, the end, and then I'll be really sad. So I just wanted to remind you that when it comes out of the oven, there's nothing snappy about it because it's hot, right? So you can't judge if it's snappy till it's completely cold. So let's just wait till they get absolutely room temperature, and then they're going to be perfectly snappy and so delicious with a cup of tea. Even now they are very yum. Bit hot. Starting to get snappy around the edges. Still a bit soft inside. I think that we're done. I think that you are on your own now to finish them off, and if you've got any questions at all, please send me a message either in the comments under the video or through my email address, which you can find on the channel. Hope you've enjoyed today's cooking. I've loved it as always, and I'll love it even more if you send me your pics or post them on Instagram and tag Hey Lisa Goldberg, which would be fabulous. So until next time, wishing all of you who are going to be celebrating Jewish New Year, Happy New Year, and everyone else, happy cooking. And until next time, see ya. Snappy already.